meeting to order at 10 a.m. Thank everybody for joining us remotely one more time. First thing I'd like to do is I'd like to ask Abby Lee if she would lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Happy to. Start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And now the Texas Pledge. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee. Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
Thank you. I heard Tony doing that Texas Pledge with us, so thank you, Tony. Okay. Agenda item number 2. I would ask for a motion for an excused absence for Commissioner Williams. He did call in and has some stuff going on, so I would entertain a motion.
I will move that we excuse the absence of Commissioner Williams.
I have a motion for Commissioner Leonard. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second from Commissioner Russell. Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Agenda item number 3, opening remarks from the chairman. I will keep this brief. Again, I want to thank everybody for joining remotely. I know this is not the best of the best to have meetings and get things vetted. I want to give a special kudos to the staff for making sure we get not only the information we normally get, but enhanced information that enables us to have more information before we do meet. You know, we have not met in person since February. It seems like that's been a long, long time ago. But I think everybody has stayed informed on what's going on. It has not been without issues, but yet at the same time, every time an issue comes up, I think the staff and the volunteers, whether it's the commission, whether it's ESAC, broker lawyer committee, broker responsibility group, they do their best to make sure everything works for the best of the agency and our number one goal of protecting the public. We'd like to welcome Abby Lee. I know we've said that before, but just as a commissioner meeting, I'd like to welcome her to the staff. I would like to thank everybody for attending the workshop yesterday. We had a lot of information, from the recovery fund to staff reports to the budget. So much information that I think the workshops make the commissioners a whole lot more informed, and I think they understand a whole lot more about the agency and what we need to move the agency forward. I think we've done a lot in the last year. I think there's still a whole lot more that we can do, and I look forward to moving the agency further and continuing to keep the call down, the hold times down, and the drop rates down. So, and we'll talk about that a little bit more when we get to some committee reports. I would like to go to agenda item number 4, discussion on the appointments, and I will ask General Counsel Vanessa Burgess to present.
Good morning, Commissioners. Vanessa Burgess, General Counsel for the record. Agenda item 4 relates to the discussion and possible action regarding appointments to the Education Standards Advisory Committee, ESAC, Texas Real Estate Inspector Committee, TREC, and the Broker Responsibility Working Group. The Commission has instituted a selection committee process recently where 3 commissioners, 2 license holder and 1 public member, review applications and put forth recommendations for open advisory committee positions for the entire commission to vote on an open meeting. This process is different from the prior process of the chair making the selections and has allowed for more commissioner input in the selection process. As you will recall, we discussed the development of this process yesterday in our workshop, and staff looks forward to making it an easier and more streamlined process moving forward. Since the August meeting, 3 selection committees composed of different commission members have met and put forth recommendations for commission vote. I will lay those out right now. For ESAC, the recommendations for license holder members with a term of January 1st, 2021 through December 31st, 2022 are Marion Napoleon, Bill Stedham Jr., Linda Conway, and Charles Jacobus. For the education provider members with the same term, it would be Kalea Youngblood and Mike Crowley. The ESAC selection committee also selected some alternate members, both in the license holder member category and in the education provider category in the event that anyone has to resign their position. The alternates selected were Mr. Leatherman, Mr. Rick Snow, Mr. Brian Underwood, and then Mr. Ruben Pena, Miss Mary Minor, and Mr. Michael Mark Butler. The selection committee also recommends ratification of Charles Porter's current position on the committee to expire December 31st, 2021. We had a lot of applicants for ESAC and a lot of interest, and that the selection committee was able to make this determination and also to get these alternates, all of whom seemed very excited to participate and ready to play a crucial role with that committee. For the Texas Real Estate Inspector Committee, a different selection committee met, and they recommend for the inspector positions, which will run January 1st of 2021 through December 31st of 2026, Mr. Scott Reagan and Mr. Bruce Carpenter. And one public member position was open, and that position's term will be January 1st, 2021 through December 31st, 2022. That's Mr. Brian Carroll, and the selection committee selected one alternate inspector member in the event that someone has to resign their position, and that is Mr. Kelly Layler. Finally, for the broker responsibility working group, the selection committee recommends, this is to replace a member who had to leave unexpectedly. The selection committee recommends Mr. Bob Baker. The staff recommendation is that the commission approve all of the nominations from the ESAC, Real Estate Inspector Committee, and Broker Responsibility Working Group selection committees as presented.
I will entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Commissioner Wilkinson moved. I believe Commissioner Leonard was second. Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. If you were on one of the search committees, thank you for your work. I know y'all had a lot of applicants, and I know y'all spent a lot of time, so I appreciate that. I would like to go from agenda item number 4. We would like to move to agenda item number 24, if we could. And I'll have Darlene Brown with McConnell Jones will present.
Good morning, Commissioners.
Good morning.
For the record, my name is Darlene Brown, and I'm the internal auditor for the agency. Item number 24 is on page 239 of the materials, and it is the fiscal year 2020 annual internal audit report. The Texas Internal Audit Act requires this report to be prepared and presented to you each year. The State Auditor's Office provides guidance on the required components, and we complete those based upon the actual actions of your agency. This year's annual report provides a summary of our internal audit activities completed in fiscal year 2020 and planned for fiscal year 2021. We completed the fiscal year 2020 internal audit plan as approved, and we have 3 audits approved for fiscal year 2021. One is which is a Public Funds Investment Act compliance audit, which we completed and have that in your materials for today. This report will be distributed to the Governor's Office, the Sunset Committee, and the State Auditor's Office. And if you have any questions on this, I will be happy to address those.
Any questions? Hearing none, this will be filed. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. We will go back to agenda item number 5, staff reports. Leading off will be Executive Director Chelsea Buckholz.
Good morning. Thank you for your time yesterday at the workshop. I'm grateful that we were able to
roll up our sleeves, provide information that was requested that staff present, and to kind of do a deep dive. I know that doing meetings 2 days in a row is a sacrifice, and I appreciate the time of each of you. I hope the time together was useful in this remote environment. It is certainly different than we wanted it to be, but I'm hopeful that it helped us move forward a bit on just some deep dives on some topics. You've been hearing from me regularly through email, just in reporting on staff updates. So I'm going to keep this fairly short, but I did want to mention a few things. I need to add my welcome of Abby Lee, our new Deputy General Counsel. She's coming at a key time as we will be without General Counsel Vanessa Burgess for the next few months as she goes out on leave. Abby comes to us most recently from the Texas Medical Board or Texas Medical Association, but before that, of course, was with Texas Realtors. So many of you know her from that work. She's very familiar with our rules and law, which I know will be incredibly helpful to our agency. So welcome, Abby. Glad to have you, and well done on the pledge. Congrats also to the new committee appointees. Thank you for your willingness to serve. Thank you also for those who have served in our rolling off of that committee work. You know, that a lot of important work happens at the committee level. That is really where some of the sausage is made, I'll say, and where folks can really dive deep and look into, you know, changes to our rules and provide really strong advisory work. So I'm grateful that we have such an interest of participation, and congratulations to the new members. Thank you also for those who spent time selecting these members. I know that was a heavy lift for many of you. Okay, a few operational updates. As I've mentioned before, COVID-19 has you know, messed with all of us in various ways. It is wreaking havoc, especially on El Paso. And we have heard from Pearson VUE, our exam provider, that they had to decrease capacity at exam locations in El Paso. This has affected some individuals who have signed up to take those exams. There is availability within about a week for rescheduling, but that is certainly an inconvenience, and we're watching that closely. Not related to COVID, I wanted you also to know that we will be closed Wednesday, Thursday, Friday of Thanksgiving. Of course, Thursday and Friday are state holidays, and we traditionally close for the second half of Wednesday. But we have expanded that to a closure for all day Wednesday because of a power outage in our building. The Texas Facilities Commission that runs our building, it has scheduled a 4-day power outage for needed maintenance. And we are out of control of the timeline of that. And it really doesn't come at a good time in that it is at the end of the month. And when the electricity is off in our building, so is our website. And so that will be a significant inconvenience for those who are renewing at the end of this month. We have a robust communications plan that has already begun to notify those who are caught in that renewal period to renew early. We will send out 2 additional emails to them, followed up by 2 texts over the course of the month to say, no, really, renew early. We hope to have the power back on and be up and running for the 30th, Monday, November 30th, to capture that last day of the month, but are making plans in the event that that does not happen. So I wanted you to know that and to spread the word as best you can. I also need to stop and brag on our employees. In the month of October was the State Employee Charitable Campaign, and that's an opportunity for our employees to decide to have a payroll deduction that goes towards a nonprofit of their choice. There are thousands to choose from. And through that campaign, we raised close to $11,000, and we had 77% of our staff participate. I gave the incentive that if we reached the 98% participation rate, we could have New Year's Eve off. We did not reach that, but maybe next year. But 11,000 is no small number, nothing to sneeze at, certainly in this environment. The entire campaign was remote, of course, which is very different than past years. So I'm proud of our employees on that front. A few additional headlines, and then I will conclude. Customer relations. In the month of September, we had a 1 minute, 20-second hold time. You see that in your materials. I'll just tack on to that. We had a 25-second hold time in October. So great success in that regard. And education, we are marching towards the implementation of the 3-hour contract requirement for continuing education. That is set to go into effect February 1st, and there are 2 new functions on our website that will help license holders in that process. The first is that we have approved 91, as of a few days ago, 91 courses that meet that requirement, and those are searchable on our website. Then additionally, we have a function on the license history that identifies of the CE one has taken, would it qualify for that to satisfy the contracts course? So those 2 new tools are on our website as of last month. Additionally, in licensing, I want you to pay particular attention to page 20 of your materials. That's the page that outlines the total number of license holders. And you'll see that in July, we exceeded 200,000 license holders, which is for the first time ever. But we dropped back in August. And so I want you to just pay attention to that, what really is an anomaly, and it was because of the extensions that we provided related to COVID-19 in March, April, May, June, and July. That essentially meant that no license holder who even wanted to expire did expire. So that's what bumped us over the 200,000 mark, and then that corrected itself in August. So we're back under 200,000, but I bet it won't be long before we reach that milestone again. Okay, with that, I will stop. But if you have any questions or if you need anything additional from me, I'm here to help.
Okay, I believe Tony will be next.
Yes, sir.
Tony Slagle, Deputy Executive Director.
Yes, can everybody hear me? This is Tony Slagle, Deputy Executive Director. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Sorry. As I always say, I get to get up here and give you good news that is the result of the hard work of our staff. Chelsea, the Executive Director, mentioned that we went from roughly a minute and a half hold time down to around 20 seconds this month. You know, the big question is, what was the call volume compared? Well, if you look, it was about roughly around 1,000 calls less for the month, but still we handled around 19,000 calls for the month, which is still very good and better than very good, excellent with that kind of hold time. I sent you, when I sent the customer service report, I sent a comparison to last October because I think it's good to give you a snapshot of what things look like and the progress we've made over the past year. I just wanted to touch base on a couple of those things in a public setting. The contact center handled 1,000 more calls this October than it did last October. And it had a higher percentage of calls that were answered on the initial call, 99.8%, almost 100%, versus 96% last October. What that means is the call comes in, the contact center is able to handle it and not move it on to something, not transfer it. They're able to actually answer that person's question. So not only are we answering a large volume of calls, we're actually answering them to the satisfaction of the people that we're dealing with, and we don't have to transfer them to other people in the agency, which is a good sign. The abandonment rate this October was 1.58% compared to 5% last October, which means we had less than 2% calls hang up. And then the hold time last October was 1 minute and 42 seconds. This October, as Chelsea mentioned, it was 25 seconds. So with 1,000 more calls in the center, answering significantly more on the first call, we were able to handle that volume with less, well, with the 25-second hold time, which is really, really great. So I really want to thank our staff. Again, I get to report these numbers, but they're the ones who do the work. A lot of that has to do with the training. Robert Hood, the director, has taken the opportunity when there are some lulls to get his staff trained up on some things. And they've there's been some there's been some adjustment to schedules, a little bit stricter adherence. Having people work remotely has helped with that. So that'll likely be part of the consideration moving forward, even when we're out of the pandemic, because I think it benefits the contact center to a certain extent to have that flexibility. So it's really great to be able to stand up here and give you guys that information and show you how far we've moved since since we started this process to really focus on this stuff. Before I move on, are there any questions about any of this? All right. The other thing I wanted to mention was Friday afternoon, I sent an email addressing kind of the wrapping up the sunset process. We submitted the final sort of audit process. There's a spreadsheet chart that I've shared with the commission prior in workshops and other meetings that we've been filling in as we go along. That was due to sunset last Friday. We submitted it. I sent all of you a copy of that report. That is showing how we've complied with everything in the sunset legislation, as well as in the sunset recommendations through the report. There will be a wrap-up meeting sometime in January where they'll go over this report, and staff will, sunset staff will weigh in on how we did. I'm assuming that will go well, because we've been in compliance with this pretty much for the last 10 months. There wasn't much to add once we got the official, hey, we need this information. So anyway, again, if there's any questions about that, I'm happy to answer them. Otherwise, we'll let you get on with your meeting.
Questions for Tony Slagle? All right, thank you for your report. Next, we'll go to agenda item number 6. Beverly Rabenberg, enforcement staff attorney, will present the annual report on timeshares and residential service companies.
I'm the program manager for the RSC and timeshare programs. The timeshare report is in your materials on page 55. Just a few brief notes. Timeshare filings were down over the second half of the year, which is typical when the economy dips. And the only other item of note with timeshare in the last year is, since my last report, we did a disciplinary order on a timeshare developer where they were reprimanded and paid a $75,000 administrative penalty. We don't do very many of those, and it's kind of significant. The RSC report is on page 56 in your materials. The filings have remained steady and continue to receive new license applications. We even got one yesterday. And the majority of the filings we have been looking at lately are rate adjustments. Those are all my comments, and I am available for questions.
Questions? Okay, thank you for your report. We will go to agenda item number 7, report by the executive committee. And this is in your material. I will just add a couple things. We met on September 3rd. Executive Director Buck Holtz gave us an update on the COVID as far as how the agency's handling it. Also talked about performance of staff and staff being reviewed annually and staggering that. Also talked about the attendance at the annual Arello meeting that was held virtually, which enabled as many commissioners to attend as many meetings as they wanted to. And I know we had several commissioners attend different meetings and got that information. And that was one meeting that virtually worked very well, because you could attend some meetings without traveling to, I believe it was Savannah, Georgia, or wherever it was scheduled for. We also met on October 8th, again, an update on the staffing, an update on the COVID-19 issues as far as license renewals and stuff like that. Renata Williams also gave a draft version of the agency's vendor protest procedures. And we discussed meeting in person. And again, meeting in person is extremely difficult when the building is closed. And it's kind of what we did at the executive committee. There are reports in your file, so if you have a question, I'll be glad to answer those. Okay. Hearing none, we will go to, Barbara Russell. Yes.
Yes, I was looking in our minutes, our information. Director Buchholz mentioned providing an update on implementation of e-performance in CAPS. Would you tell me what that is?
Absolutely. So that is a new, so first of all, CAPS is, I'm going to get this a little bit wrong, but I'm going to just tell you how my brain thinks of it. It is a system that we are moving towards that is statewide, a financial system, a human resources system, a performance system. It has many different modules, and every state agency over the course of many years are moving towards using those systems. So we have just moved towards the e-performance module of CAPS, and that means that our performance assessments of employees will be done using that system. And at the same time, excuse me, we shifted the way in which we are doing performance evaluations. We are doing those on an annual basis, and on the anniversary of an employee's employment date or promotion date, whichever is most appropriate. It used to be that performance evaluations were all done at the end of the calendar year, and merit raises were provided around in the spring, around March, and all of that will be around an anniversary date instead, basically to spread them out and to make that process more meaningful.
Okay, so this is
your question?
Is this a more uniform way of evaluating?
It is, and it moves us away from a paper system and into a computer system. And there's a learning curve. It has been a painful process, but I think we're better off for it.
Thank you.
Thanks for the question. It also staggers the reviews. That way you're not doing, 40 reviews at one time. And I think all of us that have reviewed or evaluated, staff, when you do them all at one time, sometimes you get tunnel vision and tired. So I think it'll make it a whole lot smoother process. All right. Thank you for the question. Any other questions on agenda item number 7? Okay, we will go to agenda item number 8, report by the Education Standards Advisory Committee. Keela Youngblood will present.
Good morning. Can everyone hear me okay? Yep,
ma'am.
good to go. All right. Good morning, commissioners. My name is Kalea Youngblood, and I am delighted to serve as your chair of ESAC this year. The committee met on October 5th and discussed a couple of key items. The committee previously assigned a working group to consider elective CE course topics that may be of particular benefit to real estate license holders in an effort to assist education providers when preparing a new course applications. As a result, a document was created that will not only be useful in providing guidance to education providers, but it can also be used as a reference tool for education staff. ESAC and TREC staff are very appreciative of the time and energy this group put into providing these suggestions, and staff will incorporate this document in conjunction with upcoming website revisions. This was a great collaboration between the committee and staff. ESAC also discussed the important and timely topics of racism, discrimination, and implicit bias as they relate to the practice of real estate. While fair housing is addressed in several pre-licensing courses, committee members and staff agreed there are opportunities to further highlight these issues in non-elective CE courses, such as Legal Update 1 and 2 and the Broker Responsibility course. So as a result of this discussion, ESAC requested staff to direct non-elective course writing groups to include additional material and case studies addressing fair housing, racism, discrimination, and implicit bias in future versions of these courses. The next ESAC meeting is scheduled for January 11th, 2021 at 10 a.m., at which time an election of officers will take place. This meeting will be held virtually and is open to the public. And this concludes my reports. I'll entertain any questions.
Any questions? Hearing none, thank you for your report. Thank you for the work ESAC's doing. Next will be agenda item number 9, report by the Texas Real Estate Inspector Committee. Chair Lee Warren will present.
Good morning, everybody. The Inspector Advisory Committee met on October 12th via teleconference. There were some public comments submitted in response to the newly proposed consumer protection notice, and most of the feedback was positive. The new notice includes verbiage to inform consumers that inspectors are required to carry E&O insurance, and that inspectors have the ability to limit their liability through the use of an agreement between themselves and their client. This is coming up on your agenda for approval, and we just want to say thank you again to Commissioner Turner for working with the IAC to help put this form together. The Plumbing Board has modified their previous rule that required a plumbing license in order to perform sewer line scope inspections. The new rule no longer requires a plumbing license for that activity. Though we don't feel it prudent to establish a specific SOP for this activity at this point, inspectors are being reminded that licensees must be competent in that particular field should they choose to perform such inspections. There was also a discussion about the multitude of different types of inspection report writing software that is being used on the market. There are some versions of the software that produces a primary report, which is not the promulgated 7.5 form that all inspectors are required to provide to a client. The software may have the 7.5 form at the end of the report or as a separate file from their form. We are stressing licensees that the promulgated 7.5 form should be the first thing that a client sees when they receive the report itself. If the software company wants to supplement that with their own format of report, then they should only do that after the 7.5 version has been presented to the client. Our standards of practice have been under review for some time now. This is a process we go through every few years to ensure that the standards are keeping up with the changing industry. The initial review is almost complete, and we're hopeful that we'll have a proposed draft submitted to the commissioners by either the first or the second quarter of next year. Our next meeting is on January 15th at 10 a.m., where we will also be not only welcoming our new members, but choosing officers as well. And if anybody has any other questions, please let me know.
Questions for Chair Lee? Hearing none, thank you for your report. We will go to agenda item number 10, report by the Broker Responsibility Working Group. Chair Leslie Lerner will present. She'll present the group's recommendation regarding education and experience in military spouses and the definition of substantially equivalent. Before she starts her presentation, there will be no action needed here. Any action on this will be handled on agenda item 25 because this will require legislative change. So Chair Leslie Lerner, thank you for joining us.
I know she's on the call. Let me just see if I can get a hold of her. No, she is writing me. Hold on. Oh, she says she's on. Okay. 1 second, everybody. Let me figure out the technical issue.
Leslie, have you tried to unmute and it's not allowing you to unmute? If so, it may be that you need to exit the meeting and return. We don't know why that quirk happens.
This is an enthusiastic group of people. They're working really hard.
We're going to give her just a couple seconds to get back. If not, we'll move to agenda item number 11. But yeah, she's back. So.
Sorry, everybody. I was speaking away and didn't know you couldn't hear me.
There she is.
Okay. Good morning, everybody. I'm Leslie Lerner, the chair of the Broker Responsibility Working Group. The Broker Responsibility working group has been hard at work trying to find a balance of education and experience requirements. We have met 5 times since June. Our group is made up of a diverse set of individuals that live in various locations and environments. This diversity affords the group the ability to bring differing views and experiences to the table. The great thing is we all respect each other's thoughts and opinions and work together as a cohesive group. I'm proud to say this cohesiveness and determination has led to the recommendation we are bringing you today. We feel this recommendation balances education and experience, takes into account the governor's barrier to entry directive and the public comments we have received. We have to acknowledge we are living in a technology-based world and need to make sure we have qualified agents and brokers that promote the value of our trade. We cannot afford for technology to take our place. A salesperson applicant is required to have 180 education hours. A broker applicant is required to have 270 qualifying real estate hours. To clarify, the 180 salesperson hours are included in the 270 hours. In addition to the 270 hours, a broker applicant must have additional 630 classroom hours in related qualifying real estate courses. This is a total of 900 classroom hours. The broker applicant must also have at least 4 years active experience during the last 5-year period. The experience must total 3,600 experience points. Simply put, that is 2.4 residential sales per year or 4 commercial sales. The Broker Responsibility Working Group studied other states' requirements and found our education hours are disproportionately higher than all other states. As a group, we came to the conclusion that classes are great, but on-the-job training is a lot more valuable. With that said, the Broker Responsibility Working Group recommends lowering the education requirement to 630 hours versus the current 900 hours. Of those 630 hours, 270 hours are mandatory qualifying real estate courses. Please remember, 180 of those 270 hours are taken prior to obtaining a salesperson license. The additional 90 hours consist of a 30-hour real estate brokerage class and 1 other 30-hour qualifying course. The remaining 360 classroom hours will consist of related qualifying courses or approved continuing education courses. If an applicant has completed the courses at an accredited college or university, those hours can be credited toward the requirement. As mentioned previously, the group feels that there is not any better way to learn than by doing. I think we could probably all agree that books are great, but we have to apply that knowledge to get a firm understanding of what is required to be successful. When we broke down the 3,600 experience points to 2.4 residential sales or 1.44 commercial sales per year over 5 years, our jaws dropped. We did not feel that was enough experience to be a well-qualified broker. We all agreed that doubling the experience points to 7,200 would produce a more well-rounded broker. Furthermore, it was brought to our attention that designated managers have a hard time achieving the experience points necessary to become a broker. They are involved in real estate transactions, but are not producing agents. To accommodate these individuals, we believe the current 20 points per month should be raised to 150. This would allow the manager to achieve the 7,200 points during the 4 out of 5 years. Last but not least, we discussed our thoughts on the term substantially equivalent and how that should be applied to the military spouse. Currently, for a military spouse to get a reciprocal broker license in Texas, the spouse must be from a state that has licensing requirements that are substantially equivalent to ours. As you may have gathered, there are not many states that are substantially equivalent to Texas. In order to welcome more military spouse applicants, the Broker Responsibility Working Group members were asked to define substantially equivalent. Some members felt that substantially equivalent should be the actual number of hours and experience points TREC requires for all applicants. Others thought that it could be lowered anywhere from 40 to 60%. After a lot of discussion, we settled on 50% of the number of education hours and experience points plus completion of the promulgated contract forms, law of contracts, law of agency, and real estate brokerage. Each class is 30 hours. If we apply the 50% to the recommended requirements, that amounts to 315 total education hours, plus 120 hours in specific Texas courses. That ends up being 89% of the required education hours. When the 50% is applied to the experience, it becomes 1,800 points within 2 of the last 3 years. If you take this one step further to the sales agent license, 50% of the 180 hours is 90 hours. If we add promulgated contract forms, law of agency, and law of contracts, this amounts to 100% of the hours currently required to apply for a sales agent license. Since I tossed around a lot of numbers and how we got to them, I want to conclude by summarizing our recommendation. Leave the 180 sales agent hours the same. Lower the broker education hours from 900 to 360. Experience points will increase from 3,600 to 7,200. This amounts to 4.8 residential sales or 2.88 commercial sales per year within the last 5 years. Raise management points from 20 per month to 150. A military spouse will have to have 50% of our requirements plus 4 Texas-based classes to be substantially equivalent. We feel this is a good balance of education and experience while making sure we have set the bar high enough to keep our value. Anybody have any questions?
Open it up for questions. Leslie, Bob, Commissioner Leonard.
Leslie, it may be my hearing, but I thought I heard 2 different numbers, reducing the number of broker hours to 630, and then I thought you said 360.
Currently it's 630.
I'm sorry, I could not hear that.
Currently it is 630.
And you're recommending?
360.
Okay. Thank you.
You.
Miller.
Were all of these numbers in our report and I just didn't pick them up?
They were not. They were in a link. We'll get them sent.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Leslie, I've got one question or a couple.
Yes.
The 360, reducing it from the 630, that includes the 270, correct?
Correct.
Okay, but that will also require the brokerage class. Will that have to be one of the 360?
Yes.
Okay, and then basically for military spouses, y'all just kind of exempted principles 1, principles 2, and financing that would probably be taken in other states, correct? You left the 3 Texas law of contracts, promulgated, and agency as requirements?
Yes, 4 Texas-based classes.
Okay, other questions? Okay, hearing none, I would like to thank you and the Broker Responsibility Working Group for taking a huge issue and dissecting it down and getting something for us to look at. Like I say, we need no action here. It can be part of the agenda item number 25, but again, thank you for your work on this.
Thank you for your consideration.
Okay, we will go to agenda item number 11, report by broker lawyer committee. Ron Walker will present, and then we're going to kind of go out of order and go to agenda item 16 after agenda item 11. Okay, Mr. Walker.
Thank you, Chairman and members of the Commission. It's good to see all of you again, even remotely. The Broker Lawyer Committee received a lot of comments after you published the draft forms. I have the one, I think, very good news for you is that there seems to be broad consensus now with regard to the changes in paragraph 5 and 23 and the merger there. Most of the comments were positive in that regard received, as well as information from the industry representatives that participated in the drafting. So there were, I'll go through the changes paragraph by paragraph for you. If you want to pull up one of the contract forms, I think the single family form is on page 145 of your materials, and I'll try to do this logically so you won't have to flip too many pages back and forth. Some of the changes were just sort of corrections and typographical errors, which I won't go through those, or stylistic in terms of grammar. In paragraph 2C, the committee had originally suggested striking some examples with regard to what controls are, namely Roman numeral 1, 2, and 3 that said garage doors, entry gates, and other improvements and accessories. And then they had proposed to add that last sentence that talked about controls include software and hardware items as well. They decided to go ahead and leave those Roman numeral examples of 1, 2, and 3 because it didn't hurt anything, and it helped clarify the definition as well. Dropping down to paragraph 4, dealing with the leases, and I'm going to get to the addenda concerning the leases, but I'm going to walk you through the contract form first. With regard to paragraph 4C, that's there concerning the leases concerning natural resources. The change there was we had proposed saying that the buyer had received those items, and we simply changed that to place in there that the seller had delivered. So in other words, that way the seller knows it's actually been occurred, as opposed to trying to determine when the buyer actually received those. And we made a change there in the lead-in in paragraph C that we're talking about natural resources leases to which the seller is a party, as opposed to all natural resource leases. So that clarification was made. There were a couple of minor changes that we were suggesting in paragraph 5. One of them, both of them are really stylistic. In paragraph 5D, we just added under this paragraph 5. So the failure to timely deliver the option fee, what happens there, and if no dollar amount is specified, then the right to terminate under this paragraph 5. That was just a small clarification. And then you'll see that we moved one sentence from paragraph 5B to 5A4. The committee thought that made a little more sense in terms of how it was flowing through the reading, but substantively no changes there at all. In paragraph 8, we realized that we had inadvertently struck what is now before you as paragraph 8B, which is old paragraph 8. Our intention was to simply move the broker or sales agent disclosure into paragraph 8 and keep paragraph 8 as it was before, and then we realized that the drafts that hit you had actually, or had come to you, had actually struck paragraph 8, so we unstruck that language. And then the only other change in the contract form, let me back up. In paragraph 21, again, just style to give you a little more freedom in terms of placing more emails in the lines. That was suggestion was made to make the lines email/fax, so that many of the some more emails could go in there, or fax numbers, depending on the needs of the parties. In the broker information box on the last page there was a couple lines added for the identification of team names. And then there was a sentence added in the disclosure at the bottom dealing with the commission. And that's that last sentence there that says this disclosure is for informational purposes and does not change the previous agreement between brokers to pay or share a commission. So that was suggested that we add that for clarification. And then if I can take your attention over to the addendum regarding residential leases, which I believe is on page 263 of your materials. There we made some changes with regard to the addendum. The focus primarily, or the discussion, was in the paragraph dealing with the representations, or what is paragraph B3. Based on some very good comments, the committee reworded that so that we avoided the use of the word representations, and are now simply talking about the seller's knowledge. What does the seller know with regard to these items A through G that are listed there? And as opposed to saying he represents that these do not exist or do exist. And then we made some conforming changes based on those changes in what is paragraph B4, because it also had referenced the representations that were being made in that same paragraph. So those were just some conforming changes based on that. And then, I skipped one there in paragraph A. You'll see that there was a sentence that was added to the bolded notice that's there after paragraph A. And we just added that one sentence that said this paragraph will not amend or terminate any existing lease. And of course, we always had that language about consulting your attorney concerning any right to terminate or need to terminate the lease or right to terminate the lease. And then I'll take your attention over to the lease fixture addendum, which I believe is on page 271 of your materials. We spent a good amount of time speaking about this one, and based on some comments from different persons, especially with regard to a former broker lawyer committee member who brought up some good suggestions with that form, we've made some changes. In paragraph A, you'll see that we added the last sentence, all rights to the leased fixtures are governed by fixture leases, just directing the parties' attentions to make sure that they actually look at those leases. And then we added paragraphs A1 and 2, which deal with whether or not the buyer will or will not assume those leases, or whether the seller will be removing those fixtures or terminating the leases one way or the other. So it just clarifies up front what the intention of the parties will be, which I think was the ultimate goal that the parties ultimately would negotiate. And given the fact that in paragraph B, there's a right of termination once those leases are actually reviewed, then that should be properly addressed with regard to the assumptions and the payment of any fees to assume those leases. But we thought it was a good point to try to get that issue out up front, and so we added paragraphs A1 and 2. And then paragraph C was added, which is really just a statement in paragraph 9 that talks about all liens being paid off in the same way we do this with the fixture leases. So it's really a repeat, if you will, of what's in paragraph 9, but it makes it clear that it does in fact apply to these leased fixtures and the leases that the security interests that may be created by them. And that really wraps up the changes that we made at our last meeting based on the changes that are before you today.
Any questions for Mr. Walker? Okay, hearing none, we will move to agenda item 16. And I believe General Counsel Vanessa Burgess will present this.
Okay, hello everybody. I'm going to present agenda item 16. I'm going to do it a little bit in two parts. So first we're going to look at what is in the register right now as proposed, and then I'm going to address two supplemental addenda. So agenda item 16 is discussion and possible action to adopt amendments to 22 TAC Chapter 537 regarding the standard contract forms. The proposed amendments to Chapter 537 and the forms adopted by reference were published in the August 28th, 2020 issue of the Register. The broker lawyer committee recommended revisions to the contract forms adopted by reference under the amendments and new rules to Chapter 537 to address issues that have arisen since the last revisions. Details of the changes to these contract forms are in your materials and were just highlighted by Mr. Walker during his presentation. 124 comments were received, and I will not go through all of those. But I will capture some of the highlights of those, and Mr. Walker addressed them, and you can see in your materials, you should have all the comments, and also we addressed them in the preamble. I'll highlight a few though. We had comments from the Texas Association of Realtors. They submitted comments in agreement with the majority of changes made to the contract forms. However, the association expressed concern regarding sellers' disclosure language contained in the addendum for residential leases in paragraph B3. As a result, the committee modified the disclosure language to reflect the leases seller was aware of at the time of transaction. We also received comments from the San Antonio Board of Realtors, which the majority of which the committee addressed verbally in the meeting. Of note is a change that was made in response to these comments and also some other comments we received relating to the disclosure in the broker information box. The committee received 14 comments requesting a 5 p.m. deadline be inserted into paragraph 5. The committee declined to make that change, noting that there's not a 5 p.m. deadline associated currently. Committee also received 3 comments suggesting insertion of a business day clarification in paragraph 5 and declined to make the suggested change for the same reason. Staff recommendation is that the commission authorize staff on behalf of the commission to submit for adoption amendments to 22 TAC Chapter 537 and the forms adopted by reference as presented to the Texas Register, along with any technical or non-substantive changes required for adoption. And that, unless anybody has any questions, that is my presentation on the rules that are currently proposed and eligible for adoption.
I will entertain a motion for adoption.
Move that the commission approve our staff's recommendation.
Second.
Motion made by Commissioner Leonard, second by Commissioner Miller. Any discussion? All opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Thank you for your work, Broker Lawyer Committee. Thank you for your work, General Counsel Burgess. Yes, Commissioner Miller, I'm sorry.
Just for clarification, I did not second that. Somebody else did. Don't know who it was.
Okay.
Commissioner Wilkinson.
Commissioner Wilkinson, thank you. Commissioner Wilkinson on the second. Okay.
And then Chair Kestner, I just had the other issue, the 2 addenda to bring up.
Okay.
As related to the contracts that are up for adoption. So I would further note that it's since been discovered that there are 2 additional contract addenda, the notice of buyer's termination and short sale addendum, that require a revised update regarding the change that was just made to paragraph 23, how it's been incorporated into paragraph 5. These forms were missed and we need to make that change. The change would solely be to change the reference from paragraph 23 to paragraph 5. The commission has 2 possible options regarding amendments to these forms. The commission could schedule a future meeting in November, early December under agenda item 28, solely to address moving these 2 forms forward for proposal in the Texas Register. And that would allow for proposal after that meeting with adoption at the February meeting. That option will allow for a March 1st release date on all forms, including those adopted today. The other option would be to wait to propose the 2 form changes at the February meeting with adoption in May and a July 1st release date of all forms. Staff recommends the former option, but it is of course at the discretion of the commission to determine how best to proceed. Notably, representatives from the Broker Lawyer Committee are in support of the former option as well, in that it allows the forms to be out ahead of the, I'm going to say, the busy season, right? for real estate transactions. It's also important to note that these changes, they're really just correcting the paragraph reference, and they are in line with the Broker Lawyer Committee's recommendations, and for their recommendations to staff to make any conforming changes to other forms that require it. This will just need to go through the rulemaking process because these forms are adopted by rule, and we want to make sure that we go through the right process. Everyone has the right amount of notice, and we don't have conflicting forms out there.
Okay, I'd like a recommendation to move forward with the staff recommendation that we have a special meeting late November, early December to get these two forms. There's not any major changes to those forms, just correcting number 23 to number 22 or leaving it blank. Does that?
Are you looking for a motion?
A motion would be great. Yes, thank you, Commissioner Leonard.
Move that the commission approve staff's recommendation with to choose option number 1.
I second that.
Okay, motion made by Commissioner Leonard. I do believe that was Commissioner Miller on the second this time. Thank you. Any further discussion?
I'd just like to say on behalf of staff, I'm sorry that we're having to do this. I think we take full responsibility for this just getting really lost in the shuffle of changes of jobs and learning the Broker Lawyer Committee and who does what. But I apologize for that need. I do think that we can make a plan and make this a very simple process for you. And by having the special meeting that will allow these forms to go into effect more quickly, which I think is important for the industry.
Mr. Chairman, if I can, let me also take some responsibility by the committee, since that's our responsibility to check that. And let me congratulate the staff for catching the error that the rest of us were too exhausted to catch, and they were able to bring it even to our attention late, though.
Okay, yeah. Thank y'all. We've had discussion. I guess we need to vote. Any against the motion? Hearing none, motion carries. All right. Is that finished with 16? You have one more, or is that?
No,
Yeah.
that's it. And we can
Sure,
discuss
Esther.
dates later.
Yes, Chairman. I'm sorry, Commissioner Leonard.
Might I just say, Ron, thank you so much for all your work. I know you got a lot of feedback. Some of it was from me. But thank you for all your hard work, and the result is a terrific proposal.
Thank you very much.
And Chelsea, no need for an apology. I'm glad we're able to correct, and thank you for catching the small omission, and no problem.
I second all that Bob Leonard said.
I totally agree. And something that I'll go ahead and let the cat out of the bag. We're working on the ability to make online comments. And after all the comments we've gotten through the Broker Lawyer, I think one time it was over 200 pages of comments. It'll make it easier, not only make a comment, but also sort them out. So, Mr. Walker, your marathon on those two meetings probably led to this new tool that we hope to implement in the near future as far as online comments. So thank you for your work.
Thank you.
We're going to move to agenda item number 13, contested cases. And at this time, I'm going to ask Commissioner Turner to take the gavel and for agenda item 13.
All right, thank you, Chair. At this time, we will take up agenda item 13, consideration and possible action regarding proposal for decision in 3 matters. I'm not clear as to why there are 3 separate matters, because they all involve the same fact pattern. So if it pleases Chair and staff, I'm going to ask if there's anyone here to speak on behalf of any of the respondents and take these up as one, although we'll take any necessary action individually.
I'm Ken Newsom. I'm here to speak on behalf of the respondents.
I'm sorry, who is that?
Kent Newsom.
Kent Newsom?
Right.
Thank you. Anybody else here to speak on behalf of either Mr. Burke, Ebby Halliday Real Estate, or Betty Misko? All right, Mr. Newsom, the way we do that is, if you're not familiar, it's similar to really an appellate argument. So we're gonna hear from our staff first, and then I'll give you an opportunity to respond, and then they'll get an opportunity for a rebuttal if necessary. So we'll give you 5 minutes, okay?
Commissioner Turner, if I could
Yes,
just
sir.
ask a real quick question.
Yes.
Mr. Newsom, are you here to speak for all three respondents?
Yes, I am.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so can we hear from our staff?
Good morning, this is Mike Malloy, Director of Enforcement. I'm going to turn over a majority of my time to the staff attorney that handled this case, but briefly, SOA gives all those case numbers, that's just their process, but like you pointed out, it's all one fact pattern. When the PFD came out, we felt that the judge erred in their determination, and we filed exceptions, and we're here to get additional consideration from the commission to possibly change the proposal for decision. But I'm going to turn over the argument and the details to Ms. Decker, the staff attorney that handled the case.
Hi, my name is Sarah Decker. The staff filed exceptions to the proposal for decision in this case because it contained findings of fact and conclusions of law that were not supported by the evidence. First of all, the proposal for decision stated that Mr. Burke did not act negligently in this matter. The evidence supports that Landon Burke acted negligently by failing to provide his client with a pertinent email that he received the day before closing. His client, the buyer, was very concerned with foundation issues in the home. A foundation repair company came out to the property the day before closing and gave a verbal estimate for repairs. The company then emailed Mr. Burke a written quote for repairs that was higher than the verbal estimate. Mr. Burke received that email the afternoon before closing, the afternoon of the day before closing, and did not forward the email onto his client, so his client closed on the property only having the lower verbal quote for repairs. In addition, the proposal for decision incorrectly states what that verbal quote for repairs was. The proposal for decision fails to mention that there was a disagreement on the verbal quote for repairs between Mr. Burke and his client. Mr. Burke believed that the verbal quote for repairs was a total of $18,000, whereas his client believed that the verbal quote for repairs was $8,000. The written quote was higher than both of these numbers, as the written quote was over $20,000. Furthermore, the proposal for decision incorrectly found that Mr. Burke gave his client an IABS notice in May of 2017. Mr. Burke stated that he gave his client an IABS notice on 4 different occasions.
Hi, Ms. Henry. Can you hear me? Yeah.
The proposal for decision states that Mr. Burke gave his client a IABS notice on 4 different occasions, and that's what Mr. Burke argued. However, the evidence shows that he only gave his client an IABS notice in July of 2017. Mr. Burke stated that his client signed 3 of these 4 IABS notices. However, Mr. Burke was unable to provide any evidence of this. And finally, the proposal for decision incorrectly found that Betty Misko and Ebby Halliday Real Estate Inc. properly supervised Landon Burke. Ms. Misko and Ebby Halliday failed to properly supervise Burke to ensure that he was informing his client of pertinent emails he was receiving and that he was providing the IABS notice in compliance with the rules. The staff is asking for the commission to find the disciplinary action and administrative penalties that we originally alleged in our petition and also stated in our exceptions to the proposal for decision, and I will be available if you have any questions.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Newsom.
Yes, I'd be happy to respond. Ms. Decker has pointed out the obvious, that there was disputed testimony, disputed evidence at this trial. Judge Rivas heard from 7 witnesses. Judge Rivas pointed out that there was disputed evidence as to when the IABAS notice was first delivered to the buyer. There was disputed evidence as to what information was provided to the buyer at the time of the foundation inspection by a foundation repair company. There was disputed evidence as to whether or not Mr. Burke was expecting to receive an email at 4:40 p.m. the afternoon before a 8 o'clock closing the next morning. There was disputed evidence all over the place by these witnesses. Judge Rivas determined the credibility of these witnesses. He pointed out, as you'll see in his analysis, that's the testimony of Ms. Collins, who is the complaining party, was disingenuous on some points in her testimony. It was Judge Rivas who heard all of the evidence, determined the credibility of the witnesses, and made a finding based upon the disputed evidence that Ms. Decker is now reciting. In every case, you have disputed evidence, right? And so that is the purpose of a judge, to determine that disputed evidence. And it seemed to me difficult for commissioners to try to substitute their opinion now for Judge Rivas as to what were the facts. As I read the License Act, it's appropriate for the commission to set aside or to change findings of fact or conclusions of law if the staff is suggesting that Judge Rivas did not properly apply or interpret the law, or that Judge Rivas relied upon an incorrect legal decision. None of that was ever raised by the commission staff. There is no assertion that Judge Rivas failed to follow the law, that he relied upon incorrect law, or that there were any technical errors in the findings of fact. I believe that's what the commission needs to be aware of before they try to change a finding of fact or conclusions of law. And that I think it'd be very difficult for commissioners to now try to just simply substitute their opinion of the evidence. I don't know if you've actually read the record or would be in a position to even make that determination about the evidence. And so we would urge you to adopt the proposed finding of Judge Rivas and enter an order that there is no violation of the License Act and no penalty should be asserted.
Thank you. Ms. Decker, I understand that you disagree with the ALJ's ultimate decision here, but can you tell us, are there any specific instances that staff is concerned with, as the code directs us, that the ALJ did not appropriately apply the law or relied upon incorrect law or precedent, or that there were any technical errors in the findings of fact that we ought to correct today? I saw that there was one technical error in one finding of fact that the ALJ already agreed with, and agreed to substitute an opinion with that correction. Can you tell us what those specific issues are?
Yes. We have a couple specific issues with the findings of fact. In finding of fact number 11, the ALJ found that, let me bring both of these up, if you'll give me just a moment. In finding of fact number 11, the ALJ found that an IABS notice was provided to the buyer in May of 2017. However, Mr. Burke was not able to provide any evidence to support this. Mr. Burke said that he provided an IABS notice on 4 different occasions, and he said that his client signed 3 of these, and one of these was signed via DocuSign. However, they had no evidence of this in their files. In addition,
no documentary evidence. Hang on, no documentary evidence.
No documentary evidence.
that he provided.
And yes, apart from Mr. Burke's testimony.
Okay.
And Betty Misko said that it is preferable for, if an IBS notice is not signed, that it is notated on the file. However, they could not provide any evidence of notation that an IBS notice was given.
Okay.
We also have issue with finding of fact number 16. As I stated in my original argument, this finding of fact states that Cornerstone gave a verbal quote of $8,000 for installation of a French drain and $10,000 for excavation. This is what Mr. Burke testified that Cornerstone stated, whereas the buyer testified that only a verbal quote for $8,000 was given. Nobody from Cornerstone testified in the hearing, so we just have what Mr. Burke stated the verbal quote to be and what the buyer stated the verbal quote to be.
Okay.
In addition, we have issues with findings of fact numbers 28 through 30, the conclusions that Mr. Burke did not act negligently, and that Misko and Ebby Holiday did not fail to supervise him. It is our position that he did act negligently, that he did fail to provide the IABS, and that there was a failure of proper supervision.
Okay. Does anybody else have any questions for Ms. Decker or Mr. Newsom or Mr. Malloy for that matter?
I have two, please.
And Commissioner Miller has her hand raised as well.
Okay. Commissioner Miller?
Mine was, can we please get page numbers? But I'm a little late in getting that, so I chased them.
Okay. So you're somewhere in the 90s. Commissioner Leonard, what were your questions?
I have two questions, I guess, of Mr. Newsom. The evidence, there apparently is no evidence that Mr. Burke was able to produce that showed he had provided the other three IABS forms to the buyer.
No, that's not correct. His testimony was that he gave the IABS notices to the buyer in connection with the other transactions. So there was evidence in the record that he did it. Ms. Collins said she didn't recall whether he did or didn't. And the judge made a determination that from listening to all of the evidence that those, no reason not to believe Mr. Burke on that point. And anyway, I don't know if that answers your question. There was no documentary evidence, Commissioner Leonard.
And if you use DocuSign, there is a, there should be a history in DocuSign of that form having been completed.
I can't answer that.
I can go back for years in my DocuSign account and bring up everything that anybody has signed.
I can't respond to that. I don't know. That was not an issue that was brought up at the trial. The DocuSign history of the transaction that never closed.
Okay, that's of lesser concern. My bigger concern is the email that Mr. Burke received from Cornerstone. Let me explain my understanding and tell me where I'm right or wrong. Mr. Burke and Cornerstone and the buyer met with had a meeting, and Cornerstone gave them an estimate, and there was some dispute over how much Cornerstone said, or the verbal estimate that they gave at the time, but they told Mr. Burke that they would be sending a confirmation email. Is there any evidence of when Mr. Burke opened? I realize he received that email from Cornerstone late on the afternoon before closing. It was either, was it 4:20 or 4:40?
4:40.
4:40 that he received that email. Is there any evidence of when he opened that email?
Weeks later, I believe.
So he knew he was to receive a confirmation estimate prior to closing, and yet he didn't check his email?
No, he did not. No, that's contrary to the evidence. He testified that he did not know that Cornerstone was going to be sending him an email with a final written estimate. He thought that Cornerstone would be sending an email to the buyer who was present at the inspection. He was not waiting to receive an email from Cornerstone that evening.
So Cornerstone told him they would be sending a confirmation estimate of the work to the buyer and not to him.
I don't recall if the evidence showed that Cornerstone said affirmatively they would be sending a written report following their verbal estimate, but there was never any discussion from Cornerstone that they would be sending a report to Mr. Burke.
Okay. Ms. Decker, what's your understanding?
As I stated in my exceptions, Mr. Burke testified that the representative from Cornerstone did verbally state that he would email a report, but the representative did not specify who he would email the report to. And Mr. Burke did not specifically ask if he was going to email the report to him or to his client.
Okay.
And he did not ask his client whether a report from Cornerstone was received.
Thank you. Thank you to both.
Okay. Anybody else have any other? Yes, Mr. Newsom.
I would like to reply to Ms. Decker. I believe
Sure.
the question.
I understand we can't do this and go back and forth. So I had you at about 3 minutes. So I'll let you use the time that you didn't use previously, but we have to stop going back and forth at some point. Okay.
Okay. Now proceed.
Yes, sir. Please.
Okay. I believe the question you posed to Ms. Decker was whether or not she was asserting that there was some error committed by Judge Rivas in applying the law, or was he relying upon some incorrect decision? And instead of answering that question, I believe Ms. Decker just wanted to rehash the evidence, all over again. And so this hearing today that we're having now really shouldn't be delving into what were the facts, because those were decided by Judge Rivas already. We should be determining, was the process fair? Did Judge Rivas properly rely upon the law? Did Judge Rivas properly apply the law? It should be left up to the administrative law judge who actually heard all of these witnesses, saw these witnesses, to determine what the facts are. And that's been done by Judge Rivas. And Ms. Decker has consistently said that Mr. Burke did not prove he was innocent. Judge Rivas said that's not the job of Mr. Burke. It's the job of the commission, because they have the burden of proof to establish he violated some provision of the License Act. Judge Rivas said the staff never met that burden. They were not able to prove a violation of the License Act. It's not up to Mr. Burke to prove his innocence. It's up to the commission enforcement staff to prove that he violated the License Act. And so rather than just rehashing the disputed facts, I think the question to Ms. Decker properly was, as you just asked, was there some error by Judge Rivas in applying the law? And I would say to you, there was not, nor have they suggested there was some error by Judge Rivas in properly applying the law.
Thank you. Anybody else have any questions?
There's several who have questions. Chair Kestner, Commissioner Russell, Commissioner Miller, and Stevens.
Okay. Chair Kestner. Having trouble hearing you.
Is that better?
No.
How about that? Okay. Couple things. Sorry about that. There was the meeting over the foundation. There was a verbal quote of $8,000. There was an amendment signed with a $4,000 concession. And then the email was sent to the agent. I guess my question is, how did Cornerstone get the email for the agent? Did the agent make the original arrangements? I have an issue with, I understand $8,000 estimate and then they split the difference $4,000. That sounds almost like a normal negotiations. I have an issue with imputed notice or constructive notice that he got the email and did not forward it. How did they get the agent's email? Was it provided? Was he the contact for Cornerstone? Just a simple yes or no, I guess.
Is your question for me?
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
Yes, for Ms. Decker.
Yes, it was Landon Burke along with his wife that set up the original meeting with Cornerstone.
Thank you.
Commissioner Miller?
Did Abby Halliday have copies of the other offers that were made by this buyer handled by Mr. Burke?
They did not.
Okay.
May I respond to that question as well? There was one offer that Miss Conitzer testified that Abby Halliday did have record of a contract for 5154 Goodwin, yet there was no record of an IBS notice along with that contract.
Okay. And who else did you say had a question? Ms. Russell?
Yes.
I think I read this correctly, that he had of the forms that they're just the IBS or whatever the acronym is, that he had evidence of one of them, that he had given her one for each house, but they did have one. It wasn't for this house, but they did have one. Am I correct on that?
Is that directed to me?
Yeah, commissioners, if you could state who you're directing your question to, it would be helpful for staff and Ms. Williams.
Yes, sir.
Okay. The one IBS notice that we have that was in evidence that was signed by the buyer was for the property that was purchased. So she's clearly got the IBS notice for the house that was purchased and the subject of this dispute. The staff allegation is, well, that wasn't timely. What was timely, and was found by Judge Rivas, was that the IABS notices that were given in connection with the other houses that Miss Collins, the complaining party, was provided on her hunt for a new house because she looked at other houses before. But that was that one written notice was the only one that was offered into evidence.
May I respond to clarify something?
Yes, ma'am.
So the IBS notice that we do have record of, it was in relation to the property that was ultimately purchased. However, there were two contracts on this property, and it was the date that the buyer signed the second contract on the property that was purchased that the IBS notice was given in our records.
Okay. Let's see, who else has questions? I can't tell from looking at from my
Commissioner
side.
Leonard has his hand up.
Sorry, Commissioner, I pulled it up now. Commissioner Leonard. And Commissioner Stevens also has a question, is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you. So Commissioner Leonard, what's your question, please?
I did not have one. I neglected to electronically lower my hand.
Thank you. Same with Commissioner Russell right now. You still have your hand up, Commissioner Russell? Commissioner Stevens, what's your question?
I have a question. Can you hear me?
We just heard you just ask if we could hear you, but that's it. And could you say who your question is for, please, ma'am?
I don't have a question. I have a comment. It's on top of page 116. So that we could follow. This is when all the parties had the opportunity to reply to any of the decisions that were provided by the administrative law judge. And on that page, it reads on top, the parties agreed. That means that there was a stipulation that a sentence within the PFD, which is a proposal for decision, should be amended to read as such. Staff further alleged Respondent Burke acted negligently or incompetently by failing to forward the email that he received from Cornerstone on August 15, 2017 to the buyer in violation of Texas Occupations Code 1101.652B1. This amended sentence should be included in the PDF. No other changes are recommended at this time. So I'd like to just remind everyone that this was actually decided by the parties. Thank you.
Okay, I think Commissioner Stevens, what was agreed to by the parties is that the reference in that particular finding of fact should be to Occupations Code 1101.652B1. And in the original proposal for decision, the administrative law judge incorrectly and accidentally put B2.
Yeah.
So the parties both agreed that the correct statutory reference would be to that section B1. They did not agree as to the substance of that allegation that the respondent acted negligently.
I appreciate you clarifying that because it is not specified on the PDF.
Yes,
Thank
ma'am.
you.
No problem. Anyone else have any questions? Okay. Mr. Newsom, thank you for your time. We reserve ruling on these issues until after we go into executive session. So apologize that you're going to have to stick around, but that's the way we've started doing this. So unless somebody wants to offer a motion just now, I think what we've been doing is going into executive session and coming back, right, guys?
Correct.
Chair, is that correct? Okay.
Correct.
Correct.
Anybody else have any comments or questions for our staff or Mr. Newsom or me? Thank you for being here, Mr. Newsom. Sure. Thank you for being here, Ms. Decker. Appreciate it. Okay, I'll return the gavel to Chair Kestner. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Turner.
Yes, sir.
Okay, I show it as 10:32. We are going to go into executive session. I'm sorry, 11:30. I'm still in El Paso. 11:32. We're going to go into executive session. I'm estimating about 45 minutes for executive session. So we will sign out. Commissioners sign out here, sign into executive, and then we will resume approximately 12:15.
Okay, so you have received a link for the executive session.
We will have a break.
Thank you.
Commissioner Turner, I can't hear you.
So I had a technical question other than, am I still on mute? Which is, do we leave this meeting and then come back?
Yes.
Click on the link again when we're coming back. Can somebody notify Mr. Newsom when we're coming back? Can he provide us a number where he can be texted or an email address and somebody let him know when we're coming back to our meeting?
I would be happy. Oh,
I was going to say,
Amber could do that.
Yes, and I think we have it, but hold on.
Yeah, I can do it. Amber, this is Amber. I can do it.
And we have Excel.
Okay.
Okay, so Mr. Newsom, we'll let you know when we're coming back in.
Thank you.
And so then everybody on the commission, you should have the invite from me. I sent a copy of the link earlier this morning from me to join the executive session. So you want to push the red leave button, hang this one up, and then go find the link that I sent you earlier today.
10 p.m. I would like to go back to agenda item number 13. And again, I will hand the gavel back to Commissioner Turner.
All right, this time we are returning to agenda item 13. Can everybody hear me okay? Just a second. Click the wrong button. It's consideration and possible action regarding proposal for decisions in the matter of SOA docket number 32920, 3070, 3071, and 3072. TREC versus Landon Burke, TREC versus Ebby Halliday Real Estate Inc., and TREC versus Betty L. Misco. We had our discussion prior to the executive session. Does anyone have a motion related to agenda item 13, or is there any further discussion prior to making a motion?
I would, if there's no discussion, I would like to go into a motion.
Okay, any further discussion before Commissioner Kessner's motion? Hearing none.
Okay, agenda item 13, move to adopt the PFD as written with the following changes to the findings of fact and conclusion of law. The commission strikes finding of fact number 11 as listed in the proposal for decision and replaces it with the following. Respondent Berg did not provide the buyer with the information about brokerage services notice until July 13th, 2017. The commission strikes finding of fact number 28 as listed in the proposal for decision. The commission strikes finding of fact number 29 as listed in the proposal for decision and replaces it with the following. Respondents Holiday and Misco failed to properly supervise Respondent Burke. The commission strikes the finding of fact number 30 in its entirety as listed in the proposal for decision. Conclusion of law. The commission strikes conclusion of law number 6 as it is listed in the proposal for decision and replaces it with the following. Respondent Burke failed to provide information about brokerage services to the buyer at the first substantive communications relating to a proposed real estate transaction and therefore violated Texas Occupations Code 1101.558. The commission strikes conclusion of law number 8 as listed in the proposal for decision and replaces it with the following. In not forwarding the email he received from Cornerstone to the buyer, Respondent Burke acted negligently and incompetently and therefore did violate Texas Occupations Code 1101.651, section B1. The commission strikes conclusion of law number 9 as listed in the proposal for decision and replaces it with the following. 9 respondents Holiday and Misco failed to properly supervise Respondent Burke in violation of 22 Texas Administration Code section 535.2A. The commission strikes conclusion of law number 10 and replaces it with the following. 10, based on the above findings of fact and conclusion of law, disciplinary action should be taken against respondents. Move to direct staff to make any substantive typographical or numbering changes as necessary to the order. In accordance with the agency's penalty matrix as a result of the above, I further move that Landon Burke be assessed administrative penalty of $3,250, reprimanded, and his Texas real estate license be suspended until the administrative penalty is paid in full, effective December 7th, 2020. Move Ebby Holiday Real Estate Inc. is assessed administrative penalty of $2,500, reprimanded, and Texas real estate broker's license is suspended until administrative penalty is paid in full, effective December 7th, 2020. Move that Betty Misco is assessed a $1,750 administrative penalty, reprimanded, and her Texas real estate broker's license be suspended until the administrative penalty is paid in full, effective December 7th. Further move that is required by the Government Code section 200.058 in the agency rule, the proposed commission modifying the findings of facts and conclusion of law to more fully reflect the evidence discussed in the PFD and conform to applicable statutes and rules regarding the evidence. The commission must consider The conclusions of law are modified to reflect the commission's ability to impose discipline and assess penalties if a license holder has acted negligently or incompetently in a manner that directly relates to the duties and responsibilities of a licensed occupation, and due consideration of the findings of facts as modified. I so move.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second. Stevens.
Who was the second from, please?
Commissioner Stevens.
Any discussion? Commissioners, any discussion prior to calling for a vote? Okay, hearing none, I believe. Chair Kestner,
Yeah.
you have a...
Yes, just some discussion. Looking at the way the findings of facts were, I just feel strongly that there was negligence in not forwarding the email, arranging the inspection, negotiating the repairs, and then oversight in making sure that IABS was signed and filed for 4 years. And that's why I made the motion I made.
Any other discussion?
This is Commissioner Miller. I'm sorry, I'm not in a visual anymore, so I'm confused. But I am totally in favor of the motion as written, and I think that we all have to realize our responsibilities in our sponsorship of agents.
Anything else from any other commissioners?
Commissioner Stevens has her hand raised.
Commissioner Stevens?
Yes. The information regarding foundation, when any agent or broker receives any information that is very important, in other words, material to the transaction, in a way that any of us would back out if we needed to receive it, I think it's very important that we pass that on regardless of which party it is. That's all I have. Thank you.
So I believe the way we've been calling the votes today, forgive me, any other discussion? So I believe the way we've been calling our votes today is I'll just ask if there are any opposed. First, I'm going to ask if there's any abstaining. And if you don't answer as opposed or abstaining, we're going to record your vote as in favor of the motion. Are there any commissioners abstaining from this vote? Are there any commissioners opposed to this vote? Or to the motion, forgive me. Hearing none, motion carries. I'll pass the gavel back to Chair Kestner.
Thank you, Commissioner Turner. We will go to agenda item number 12, public comments. I'm not sure if we have public comments. Amber or Vanessa?
Yes, I can speak to that. We did receive a request to provide some public comment from a member of the public, Mr. Francis Ciarcielli, earlier this morning. He asked that we provide you with his public comments for the record. He was in attendance. I don't think he is anymore, so we will continue to go with what he requested us to do earlier this morning. You'll see on the website we have uploaded those comments as a supplement, and we will also send those out directly in an email to the commissioner. Amber, I don't think he's back on the line, right?
Right, I do not see him present at this time.
Okay, so those comments you have as a supplement to materials. They're on the website. They're available for anyone to see, and we will circulate those directly to the commission after this meeting, just for additional documentation of his comments and what he wanted you all to hear. Other than that, we did not have anyone else sign up.
Okay, thank you. We will move to agenda item 13, rules for possible adoption. I'm sorry, agenda item 15. And Deputy Executive Director Tony Slagle will present. Page 117.
Yes, I want to make sure you can hear me because I'm unmuted. Everyone can hear me all right? Thank you, sir. All right, so this is agenda item 15, discussion of possible action to adopt amendments to 22 TAC section 531.18 consumer information. The proposed amendments to section 535.18 and the form adopted by reference were published in the August 28, 2020 issue of the Texas Register. The amendment to the Consumer Protections Notice was recommended by the Real Estate Inspector Committee and adds a statement to alert consumers that inspectors licensed by TREC are required to maintain E&O insurance and to cover losses, or E&O insurance to cover losses from performance of real estate inspection in a negligent or incompetent manner. Real estate license holders are required to post this notice at their place of business and on their website. 7 comments were received, 5 comments were in favor. 1 comment generally indicated a dislike for rules that protected the interests of some but not all. Another comment indicated a belief that proposed change did not advance consumer protection interests and instead encouraged citizens to file complaints tied to insurance. The Inspector Committee considered these comments at its October 12, 2020 meeting and voted to move forward with a recommendation to the Commission to adopt the rule as proposed. I do want to note that there is an adoption date effective date of February 1st, 2021. That's to give staff the ability to make sure that anyone who's linked to this current version or the current version of the form, that link won't die, and there's not a whole lot of maintenance that has to be done to keep that link live. So we're going to work to make sure that the only thing that's going to change if someone has already linked to their website is the form. So we need a little bit of time to do that. So there's a recommended effective date of February 1st, 2020. So anyway, staff recommends to move forward with the changes to the notice as recommended by the Inspector Committee. So the staff's recommendation is to authorize staff on behalf of the Commission to submit for adoption amendments to 22 TAC section 531.18 consumer protection or consumer information and the form adopted by reference as published to the Texas Register, along with any technical or non-substantive changes required for adoption to be effective February 1st, 2021.
So moved that the Commission approve staff's recommendation.
I have a motion from Commissioner Turner, a second from Commissioner Leonard. Any opposed? Any abstaining? Hearing none, motion carries. Thank you.
I have a quick comment. I'm sorry.
Yes, Commissioner Turner.
I wanted to thank the Inspector Advisory Committee and in particular its chair for the work they did to try and get this consumer notice right, and for working with me and being open to some suggestions. So I just wanted to say that I appreciate that. Thank you, Lee.
Okay. Commissioner Leonard, you had your hand up. Did you have something, or are we good?
I was going to make the motion.
Oh, very good. Okay, and I want to thank Commissioner Turner and the Inspector Committee for getting this done and getting it done correctly. Okay, we will move to agenda item 17, Renata Williams, on rules for proposal. I'm gonna have her present agenda item 17 and then also present agenda item 18. Ms. Williams.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Commissioner. Agenda item 17, discussion and possible action to propose repeal of 22 TAC 534.7 vendor protest procedures. The proposed repeal of 534.7 eliminates the agency's use of the vendor protest procedures adopted by the Texas Facilities Commission. TREC will replace the vendor protest procedures in rule with a new set of vendor protest procedures that better meet the agency's need and provide greater transparency to both members of the public and parties seeking to protest. Staff recommends on behalf of the Commission to submit the proposed repeal of 22 TAC 534.7 vendor protest procedures as presented, along with any technical or non-substantive changes required for proposal to the Texas Register for publication and public comment.
Chairman Kessler,
Yes.
I move that the Commission approve staff's recommendation.
Motion made by Commissioner Stevens.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Miller. Any discussion? Hearing
Again,
none.
that was not Jan Miller with the second.
Was it Commissioner Wilkinson?
Yes.
Okay, sorry about that. Second made by Commissioner Wilkinson. Any discussion? Hearing none. Any opposed? Any abstaining? Motion carries. Agenda item number 18.
Yes, sir. Agenda item 18, discussion and possible action to propose new 22 TAC 534.7 vendor protest procedures. The proposed new 534.7 creates new vendor protest procedures that better meet the agency's need than the previous version. This new rule also more clearly establishes the agency's protest, review, and appeal process and identifies the roles and requirements of both TREC staff and the protesting party. Staff recommendation is to authorize staff on behalf of the Commission to submit the proposed new 22 TAC 534.7 vendor protest procedures as presented, along with any technical or non-substantive changes required for proposal to the Texas Register for publication and public comment.
I would entertain a motion.
Move that the Commission approve staff's recommendation.
Motion made by Commissioner Leonard,
Second by Stevens.
seconded by Commissioner Stevens. Any discussion? Hearing none. Anybody abstaining? Any opposed? Hearing none. Motion carries. Agenda item 19, discussion possible action to proposed amendments for renewal of real estate license. Director of Education Jennifer Wheeler will present. Thank you, Chief Financial Officer Renata.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chair Kestner and Commissioners. Jennifer Wheeler, Director of Education and Exams. Agenda item 19 is discussion and possible action to propose amendments to 22 TAC 53591 with regard to renewal of a real estate license. The proposed amendment to 53591 corrects a reference within the rule to include the appropriate subsection. Essentially, this is simply a correction to unintentional altering to alphanumerical order in the rule with regard to the contract courses. The staff recommendation is that you authorize staff on behalf of the Commission to submit the proposed amendments to 22 TAC 53591, renewal of a real estate license as presented, along with any technical or non-substantive changes required for proposal to the Texas Register for publication and public comment. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Would entertain a motion.
Move that the Commission approve staff's recommendation.
Motion made by Commissioner Leonard,
Second, Jan Miller.
I had a second. Commissioner Wilkinson. Any discussion? Hearing none. Anybody abstaining? Anybody opposed to the motion? Hearing none. Motion carries. Thank you, Jennifer. Agenda item number 20, possible action to propose amendments to the schedule of administrative penalties. Director of Enforcement Mike Malloy will present.
Good morning, or excuse me, good afternoon. Agenda item 20, discussion and possible action to propose amendments to 22 TAC 535-191, schedule of administrative penalties. The proposed amendment to 535-191 corrects a reference within the agency's schedule of administrative penalties that corresponds to a statutory changes enacted by the 86th legislature in the Senate Bill 624. Staff recommends authorize staff on behalf of the Commission to submit proposed amendments to 22 TAC 535-191, schedule of administrative penalties as presented, along with any technical or non-substantive changes required for proposal to the Texas Register for publication and public comment.
Okay.
Chairman Kestner, I move that the Commission approve staff's recommendation.
Motion made by Commissioner Stevens.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Leonard. Any discussion? Hearing none. Anybody abstaining? Any commissioners opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Thank you. That brings us to agenda item 22 under new business, discussion regarding results of the Public Fund Investment Act audit and compliance statement. Chief Financial Officer Renata Williams will present that, and also agenda item 23.
Good afternoon. For the record, Chief Financial Officer Renata Williams. Agenda item 22, discussion regarding the results of the Public Funds Investment Act audit and compliance statement. Staff would like to inform the Commission that the Public Funds Investment Act compliance audit was concluded on October 20th, 2020. This audit was performed as a part of the approved FY21 annual internal audit plan and is required by Texas Government Code Chapter 2256. The audit was performed by McConnell & Jones and determined that the agency is compliant with all the requirements of the Public Funds Investment Act. Additionally, management's internal controls for investment processes and reporting are effective and working as designed. This concludes my discussion regarding agenda item 22, Public Funds Investment Act audit and compliance statement.
Okay, agenda item 22.
Okay, so
Chairman Kestner, I move that we adopt this motion. I'm sorry, that we adopt this proposal by the agency. Thank you.
Have a motion.
Second, Russell.
Second by Commissioner Russell. Any discussion? Hearing none. Any abstaining? Any commissioners opposing? Motion carries. We will go ahead agenda item 23, then I will backtrack to agenda item 21 that I skipped. Yeah. So let's go ahead and finish 23, then we will go back to 21.
Yes, sir.
Right, and sorry, I'm going to go back. You did not. I got caught off. You need action on item 21. On items 22 and 23 and 24, you don't actually need action on. Well, we already did 24, 22, and 23.
Okay. All right. Go ahead and present 23.
Yes, sir. So agenda item 23, discussion regarding the Comptroller's post-payment audit report. Staff would like to inform the Commission that the Comptroller's preliminary post-payment audit report number 329-19-01 was received on October 13, 2020. There were no corrections needed to the draft report. As such, this will be the final published version. The purpose of this audit was to determine whether the contracts were procured according to applicable state laws and comptroller requirements, payments were processed according to applicable state laws, comptroller requirements, and statewide automated system guidelines, documentation to support those payments was appropriately maintained, capital and high-risk assets were properly recorded, and appropriate security over payments was implemented. This audit was conducted by the Texas Comptroller of Public Accounts and covers the period of December 1st, 2017 through November 30th, 2018. There were 4 areas where findings were issued. Those areas were payroll transactions, payment card transactions, contract transactions, and target analysis. In the area of payroll, the findings were incorrect state effective service date and longevity payment. The auditors identified 1 employee at the Commission with an incorrect state effective service date. The employee was identified in a report outside of the sample that listed prior state service. This error resulted in a $1,700 underpayment on longevity pay. During the audit, the Commission verified the prior service and made the required entries into CAPS. The employee was credited with the additional 10 years of state service credit, which resulted in the employee being owed the additional $1,700. And this was complete in October 2019. The next area in payroll was the incorrect salary payment amount. Auditors identified 4 employees who received incorrect salary payments. 3 employees were identified in a report outside of the sample that listed incorrect salary payments, and the other employee was identified as a part of the sample. Auditors asked the Commission to provide detailed information to help determine how the issues occurred. 1 employee received 2 incorrect payments totaling $4,250. in March of 2018. This employee was paid for 272 hours when the employee actually worked a total of 159.5 hours and was eligible for a payment of $2,492.19. This resulted in an overpayment of $1,757.81. The employee terminated their employment with the agency on August 13, 2018, and was subsequently placed on a warrant hold on January 30th, 2020. 2 employees were underpaid when staff entered incorrect salary amounts in the payroll system in March of 2018. This resulted in one employee being underpaid $50 and the other employee $100 for the months of March 2018 and April 2018. In March 2020, the agency processed payroll payments to compensate these employees. The final payroll issue, auditors identified an hourly employee who was overpaid 9 hours in November of 2017. This resulted in an overpayment of $216. The former employee was placed on a warrant hold on June 4th, 2020. The next area of findings was in regards to payment card transactions. So the payment card transaction findings pertain to missing warrant hold verification. Auditors identified 4 payment card transactions totaling $6,089.12 where the purchasing staff failed to verify the vendor's warrant hold status before making the payment. State agencies are required to verify a vendor's hold status for non-emergency credit card payments over $500 and are not to proceed with the purchase until the warrant hold has been released. The next area was contract transactions. The auditors identified 1 contract that did not follow the correct process for documentation required before a contract award. The commission failed to obtain delegation of authority from the state auditor's office to enter into a contract for audit services in a timely manner. The request was submitted after the contract was signed and executed. In addition, the vendor compliance verification was obtained after the contract award date for the audit services as well. The commission provided the documentation that staff completed the verifications, but the document date was after the contract execution. Lastly was the area of target analysis. So the auditors reviewed the commission's procedures to comply with the federal mandate to properly identify and handle payments involving the International Transfer Fund. We had 3 direct deposit forms on file that were not properly completed, 2 for employees and 1 for a vendor. Since these were not completed, the commission was unable to indicate whether state funds were being forwarded to a financial institution outside of the United States. As a result of the findings, I was required to submit a corrective action plan to the Comptroller of Public Accounts to identify how we will mitigate these risks going forward. The corrective action plan included all of the recommendations provided by the Comptroller's Office, updates to our internal procedure documents, implementing checklists for HR, accounting, and purchasing, regular review and audit of the procurement files, and by virtue of migrating to the centralized accounting payroll personnel system CAPS, there are separation of duties and internal controls built in that will prevent one person from overriding a payroll transaction without another layer of approval. It is my goal to ensure that we do not have the same findings when we go through the post-payment audit again in 3 years. This concludes my briefing on agenda item 23, the Comptroller's post-payment audit. Are there any questions?
We do not need a motion, but I'll open it up for any questions or comments.
Mr. Chair, I have a comment. Just for doing, thank you for just to inform the public that a warrant is a check in the. Can you please? I think I just want to make sure. Please correct me if I'm wrong. It is a check in the state system. Thank you. That's all I have.
Yes, ma'am. That is correct.
Thank you. Great.
Okay. Any other comments? Ms. Williams, thank you for your hard work in not only moving forward, but also going back and getting that taken care of. We appreciate it. Thank you for all you do for the agency.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to go back to agenda item number 21, and Director of Licensing Denise Sample is probably wondering why we forgot her. Sorry about that.
No worries. No worries. I'm here. So whatever order you guys want to do it in. I'm Denise Sample, the Director of Licensing, and I'm presenting agenda item 21, discussion and possible action to propose amendments to 22 TAC 535-216, renewal of license. The proposed amendments implement statutory changes enacted by the 86th legislature stating that applicants for reinstatement of an inspector license who held the same license within the previous 2 years are eligible for reinstatement if they've completed the requiring continuing education hours for renewal, satisfy the agency's requirements for honesty, trustworthiness, and integrity, and for real estate inspector applicants, submit proof of sponsorship by a professional inspector. Applicants who meet those criteria are not required to retake the exam for licensure. The proposed amendments are recommended by the Texas Real Estate Inspector Committee. The staff recommendation is to authorize staff, on behalf of the Commission, to submit the proposed amendments to 22 TAC 535-216, renewal of license, as presented, along with any technical or non-substantive changes required for proposal to the Texas Register for publication and public comment.
Okay, I will seek a motion.
Move the commission approve staff's recommendation.
Motion made by Commissioner Leonard.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Wilkinson. Okay.
And Miller.
Commissioner Miller, any discussion? Hearing none. Any
I have
commissioner?
a question.
Yes.
Sorry. Ms. Sample, can you please let us know if the standards for Texas real estate licensees are going to be the same as those for veteran spouses? That was a question. Are we going to have the same number of requirements or required hours as we heard earlier? Do you know? Or perhaps I need to ask somebody else.
What specific type of license are you referring to? I may not have heard you correctly.
I just want to make sure that we're speaking on, this is for Texas real estate, but I mean for brokers and agents, correct?
Well, this rule is to clarify and get in line with the statute for real estate inspector reinstatement.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Yeah, no problem.
Commissioner Russell, you had your hand up.
Yes, I wanted to ask, since realtors have been having their fingerprints done for a long time, is this the beginning for inspectors, or has that been the rule?
No, inspector fingerprinting requirements have been in place since 2013. This just aligns some of our rule language with the statute as far as a reinstatement. So an inspector license holder who's been expired for more than 6 months, but less than 2 years. So this just spells out that if they come in before for reinstatement within those 2 years of that license being expired, they don't have to retake the test.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, any more discussion? Any commissioners abstaining? Any commissioners opposing the motion? Hearing none, motion carries. Thank you very much. We will go to agenda item 25, Deputy Executive Director Tony Slagle on possible legislative initiatives.
Yes, sir. This is Deputy Executive Director Tony Slagle. So we discussed this yesterday at the workshop. I wasn't sure if you wanted me to share, since this was not part of the materials per se, it was to be presented. You want me to share my screen that has the initiatives listed out on it as well?
Yes, please do.
All right. Bear with me just a moment. Is that big enough for everybody to see?
Yes.
Okay. So as we discussed yesterday, there are about 4 sort of general subjects that would be considered as priorities for this session should we have the ability to move forward in them. Also, as we discussed yesterday, this is a unique legislative session. So, you know, while we the commission may want to move forward with these, we're not sure what the bandwidth of the legislature is going to be based on various things dealing with the pandemic, the budget, hurricanes, all sorts of things that have happened. So, but should we have the opportunity to move forward, this is the list of legislative priorities that we discussed yesterday at the workshop that the commission agreed to move forward with. The only thing that was added after that discussion was the the possible consideration of revisions to the real estate recovery fund, the per occurrence limit to possibly raise that, and then the overall fund amount to possibly raise that as well. That particular aspect of the Real Estate Licensing Act has not been updated since, I believe, 1992. So there was some talk that perhaps this may be the time to look at that and reassess what those needs might be for that. So that was added yesterday per the discussion. Does anybody have any questions about any of these? Is there
any questions for Deputy Executive Director Schlegel? Okay, guess not.
All right. So what the staff recommendation is that the commission directs staff to proceed with these legislative initiatives as presented and to work with the executive committee on any issues that may arise throughout the session.
Chairman Kessler, may I make a motion, please?
Yes.
I move that the commission approve staff's recommendation with the following changes: that we retain the Inspector Recovery Fund.
Okay, we have a motion on the table.
Second, Russell.
Second by Commissioner Russell. Discussion. Hearing none. Any commissioners? Yes, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. I'd just like to say, if we were to remove the Inspector Recovery Fund, the public would be left on its own to seek recovery. Thank you.
Okay. Other discussion? Executive Director Buckholz. Oh.
Chairman Kessler, I have to ask, which motion are we considering?
It's the motion to accept the legislative priorities with executive committee working with staff, with the exception of the Inspector Recovery Fund.
I made a motion to accept staff's recommendation, and Commissioner Stevens made a motion at the same time to accept the recovery fund. So my question is, which one are we considering now?
We need a second on your motion. If we can get a second, then we will discuss it and we could entertain an amendment to the motion. If somebody wants to second Commissioner Leonard's motion, if not, then it will die without a second and we will go to Commissioner Stevens' motion to accept the staff proposal with the exception of the Inspector Recovery Fund. And if that does not have a second, then we start over.
What was Commissioner Leonard's motion, please?
Commissioner Leonard motion, if I'm correct, to approve staff's recommendation for the legislative priorities, with staff communicating with the executive committee throughout the session.
Tony, can you put them back up on the screen, please? I'll second Commissioner Leonard's motion.
Oh, we have a motion and a second. Now we can open it for discussion. And Commissioner Stevens. Right, you can ask for an amended motion. Okay, Commissioner Stevens. Okay,
She's muted.
Since there is no discussion, anybody abstaining from the motion? Anybody opposed to the motion? Hearing none, motion carries. And that will bring us to agenda item 26. This is kind of a odd agenda item. Need to discuss possible action to nominate candidates for office as a vice chair and secretary of the commission. This normally is done in February, but we bring it up here. This is not a season to campaign because you cannot campaign due to the walking quorum. So you can campaign yourself and two other commissioners, I guess. But anyway, if you have an interest, then this is an opportunity to show an interest. Okay. Anything on agenda item 25? And Vanessa, am I missing something on this?
No, it's my understanding. So we do have a policy in place that that has us put this on the agenda for this meeting. It's my understanding that traditionally it's all taken place at the February meeting, but we just want to be in line with policy. And if anyone wants to do that now, they can. But I think traditionally it's all been taken care of at the February meeting.
Okay. Okay, agenda item 27, discussion possible agenda action items regarding future agendas. Anything y'all would like to see on the future agenda? Okay. Agenda item 28, discussion and possible actions for scheduled future meetings. I believe General Counsel Burgess might have some dates that we can look at.
I do. So I will first, I just had it up. We met yesterday and discussed briefly the documentation we have that relates to your traditional commission meetings and workshops. I went ahead and put those estimates into actual dates. So for your February meeting, taking into account the holiday, it would be February 16th for the commission meeting, February 17th for a workshop to likely include budget was what we discussed yesterday. And then for May, it would be May 3rd, 2021 and May 4th if you want a workshop then. For August, it would be August 9th, 2021, August 10th, 2021 if you want a workshop. And then November 8th, 2021 and November 9th with the workshop, with that November 9th one being similar to what we had yesterday with the annual training. So those would be the dates that fall in line with the, there's a document we have that schedules commission meetings, and you can adjust that accordingly, but that fits in there. And then I also have some proposed dates for the meeting regarding the broker lawyer, those two addenda. It's up to you if you want to, do you want to hear those now?
Please.
Okay. Hold on one second, I just had them open. Amber, do you have them? I know you sent them to me and now I don't see them.
Yes, so I had Monday, November 23rd, or Monday, November 30th, or Monday, December 7th.
And if Mondays don't work for, I mean, if there's something that works better, we're just trying to give some suggested dates on that because that is a special meeting. And we're just trying to give you some days to help coordinate it. We probably need to do it early-ish December, late, that's kind of the latest we'd want to do it just so that we can get everything to the register. And we don't anticipate that being a long meeting.
Should we send the dates out to the commissioners for their availability?
Yes.
I know 12/7 is going to be a challenge for myself, but we'll see what the other commissioners have.
Okay.
If we can do that
For
pretty
the
quick, that
mini.
way we can act.
Yeah, okay.
Well,
Um,
12/7's a problem. 12/7's a problem for Jan Miller as well.
Okay, we'll look for that special meeting. Did the dates that we mentioned for the, for your regular meetings, those line up with what you've been doing in the past? Do you want us to go ahead and start looking at those too?
Would you mention those again, please?
I will, sure.
I got 16th and 17th.
The 16th and 17th of February. Then we have May 3rd with a possible May 4th workshop. That's optional, right? Then we had August 9th with the 10th for a workshop if you want. And then we have November 8th with a November 9th workshop, which is the annual training one.
Thank you.
Oh. Okay, anything else on agenda item 28? We'll get those dates out for the late November, early December meeting, and we'll get that taken care of. All right. Prior to adjourning, just a follow-up, the broker responsibility working group, that text and information will be sent out to everybody. I want to thank everybody for their time and logging in and doing this virtually for, we hope, is the last time, but it might not be, but hopefully it is. And if there's no arguments, I will adjourn this
Chairman
meeting.
Kessler?
Yes.
This is Bob.
Yes, Commissioner Leonard.
At the risk of backtracking or bringing up an agenda item that's already been discussed, I don't think I really am, but I think at some point, whether we start an executive or with the executive committee or our next workshop or our next meeting, I'd love to see an update on the now infamous letter we received from Governor Abbott a year ago, October. I think there's a few things on there we still need to either discuss or address.
Okay. Definitely. All right. Anything else before I have a motion to adjourn at 2:05 p.m. Central Time?
Second.
All right, I got a motion and a second. All opposed? All right, we are adjourned. Thank y'all.
Thank you. Happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving to everybody.